All right, welcome back to my visual podcast. This is episode 4 this week of Hunt Race Tales of Adventure. This trip is about Guatemala, an adventure I did there in 2015 with Tom Oehler, and we did at the same time a Wheels for Life project. It's a very cool place, Guatemala in Central America. We only did a 5-day adventure, so I would call it kind of a mini adventure, but it was really great way to see that country and to experience the culture. It has such a beautiful culture. It has great mountain biking. It's really an adventure country, and we got to do quite a bit. So here we go. Hut to hut biking in Guatemala. A young man, 18-year-old Kevin, stands on a dusty street corner on the outskirts of Antigua, Guatemala. 2 years ago, he received a bicycle from Wheels for Life through his school, Escuela Proyecto La Esperanza, which was founded and is run as a UK-based charity. They produce an excellent educational program for the extremely poverty-stricken people of the Antigua area in Central America. Kevin jumps on the back of our pickup truck and guides us to his humble home where he lives with his mother. It is a primitive brick building with a metal door and no running water. His room is tiny, and besides his bed he stores a few belongings, which consist mainly of clothes, school supplies, and apart from his football trophies, his most precious possession, his beloved bicycle. Thanks to this bicycle, he can travel to school much faster and be more punctual. His family cannot afford the 1 quetzal, 13 cents, for his bus fare on a daily basis. Kevin is now taking a university course to complete his education, and in doing so is building himself a platform for a brighter future. His passion is football, but he rides his bike up a steep hill by his home with ease and cruises the 10 kilometers journey to school through cows and traffic like a New York bike messenger. Stefan Voitl approached me a few months ago and asked whether I would like to join him and fellow Austrian trials rider Tom Oehler on a bike adventure, whilst at the same time incorporating a trip to visit a Wheels for Life charity project. They talked about their goal to return home with a collection of photographs taken during our time in Guatemala, which they would exhibit and sell to raise funds for another Wheels for Life project. Great! We all met up in Guatemala City, where we rendezvoused with local tour operator Matt Hartel from the Old Town Outfitters. He had suggested a unique and remote hut-to-hut tour in the highlands at a high altitude of 10,000 feet, give or take. We had all brought our full suspension mountain bike, except Matt, who was rocking his hardtail. During the first few days, we were treated to some day rides around the picturesque and colonial cobblestone city of Antigua, which is surrounded by several active, and by active I mean spewing and fuming volcanoes. We also got to ride the first bike park in Guatemala, El Sur. After a 45-minute bumpy truck shuttle up the hill, we were offloaded halfway up the mountain Volcán de Agua to embrace a 20-kilometer downhill ride through lush cloud forests with a terrain of loose, dusty volcanic soil. It was pretty cool. They had built this really long trail down this mountainside with berms and some rollers and jumps, and it was in this beautiful rainforest slash cloud forest that was really lush, and it was definitely a really nice way to warm up. A few days later, after a 5-hour drive through the countryside, we arrived near Todos Santos at the base of Los Chuchumantanes mountain range in the highlands. The goal was to ride all the way via Laguna Magdalena and Chortiz to the town of Acul in 3 days, sleeping in simple backpackers' huts and getting fed by local families. The trails, when we had any, and the terrain were rather technical and slow going. Often we had to push, hike, and trials our way on the little-used trails. Between scattered remote farms and wandering shepherds along the way, we were seldom alone, but always far from civilization. When we arrived at the small settlement of Laguna Magdalena, the locals were rather surprised to see us come down the rough hillside on mountain bikes. They'd never seen anything like that before. The village was named after the beautiful lagoon and the waterfall near the cabin where we were staying. As soon as the sun went down, I put on every piece of clothing I had. It got really cold there. With no electricity or fire, we were relying on the blankets provided in the hut. After a fun round of dice and a flask of local moonshine, we crawled into our beds before 9 p.m. When we woke up, the stars were still visible in the dark sky and the ground was frozen. We didn't waste much time to begin our climb out of the freezing valley to reach the first rays of sun. This was a big day. Most of the route was never ridden on bicycles, and there were several parts with no trail at all. We knew that the small village of Ortiz at the end of our day had another backpacker cabin available, but in between we had to traverse several valleys and mountain ranges, always at an altitude of around 3,000 meters, where our highest point was actually at 3,200 meters that day. Interestingly, they still have trees growing at this altitude, and luckily the air didn't seem as thin as it would be the case in the Alps at this altitude. In the Alps, the tree line is more like 2,000, 2,200 meters, while here it is more like 3,200 meters. Between being busy shooting photos, filming some footage, and the slow going because of the technical nature of the trail, we didn't arrive at our destination until right before sunset. Tom's trials biking skills transferred very well into his mountain biking style. With ease, he would pick his line through the gnarliest rock gardens. At one point, Matt suggested a potential shortcut, which he was not sure about. This was not an area to get lost in. After following a tiny, overgrown trail for an hour and a half, we came back to the main track. We figured we had saved about 30 minutes, but we still had another 2 hours to go with the sun already getting close to the horizon. When we arrived at the hut, we found that 2 backpacking girls from the UK and their guide had already snatched up most of the beds in the cabin. We scattered some mattresses and blankets on the floor and made ourselves at home. Showers were out of the question and drinking water had to be filtered. A local family invited us into their primitive home with dirt floors and a fire pit in the middle of the room, where the females of the families were preparing a tasty smelling meal consisting of chicken broth, noodles, potatoes and eggs. The same would be served for breakfast the following morning. After losing my crown as the undisputed Yahtzee dice champion the night before, I was looking forward to the last leg of our trip, the long downhill to the Hacienda San Antonio, a working cheese farm. The trail reminded me of the old military switchback trails in the Italian Alps from World War II. We only encountered some shepherds and a few pack horses hauling supplies into the highlands. One of the horses was accidentally spooked by the rolling wheels and fell off the trail into the scrub. We had to help remove the heavy load from the horse so that it could get back on the trail. Luckily, the horse was all right. Beautiful trails, natural terrain, and wild Guatemalan backcountry provided a great stage for our adventure. Back in Antigua, we were all getting ready to visit the EFTC school, Education for the Children, and meet some of the previous Wheels for Life bike recipients, as well as the 31 new children that would receive a bike from us whilst we were there. Wheels for Life is a non-profit charity that provides bicycles to people in need of transportation in developing countries. EFTC is a school run by a UK-based non-profit charity. Their setup was most impressive. Not only do they provide education to over 600 children, they also give access to their students to healthcare, nutrition, transportation, as with the bikes we donated, and where needed, physiological counsel and therapy for kids and families that have undergone traumatic experiences. Further educational support includes university scholarships to set these kids up for real jobs and an opportunity to break out of the vicious cycle of poverty. Many of these families live on less than $1 per day, and often 3 or 4 children share one small room and one big bed. I was very chuffed to see Stefan and Tom supporting my cause, and I was inspired by seeing firsthand the situation and hardship these kids are facing. I was also happy to see our project flourishing and succeeding after our initial phase 3 years ago. It was rewarding to see the bikes put to good use and still running after all these years. Some of the students are now attending university with dreams of administrative jobs or work in Guatemala's growing tourism industry. In the spring of 2015, Stefan Voitl displayed his photographs at an exhibition in Vienna during the Argus Bike Festival and raised funds for our cause. If you are interested in touring Guatemala, contact Old Town Outfitters at adventureguatemala.com. And if you're interested in our charity, Wheels for Life, check out our website, wheelsforlife.org, with the number 4 in the middle. So this was it for this week's visual podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. You can watch the YouTube clip. It's a 5-6 minute clip from this trip on my YouTube channel. And hope to see you next week. Hasta la vista.